Okay, so are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So hello, today our topic is depressed moods, psychiatric hospitals, bipolar disorder, and other forms of depression. Since depression is one of the most important topics these days, I decided to talk to my colleague and particularly good friend, Joana Lapinskaite, about its effects on the average individual. It should be noted that there are various forms of depression, so it is extremely important to dig deep into yourself so as not to reach the worst point. Together with Joanna, I decided to share my experience and discussed the most critical issues of this topic. Although there are people who say that depression is not a disease, it is just a belief, but if a specialist in this field shows that the disease and prescribes the proper medication for the patient, it means that there is something to treat, and others can draw whatever conclusions they want. So, in your opinion, Joanna, it is possible for a patient person suffering from depression to avoid medication if it is severe enough?
In my opinion, if it is severe enough, if it's really severe type of depression, unfortunately, it's not possible to avoid medication unless the person is really psychologically strong. But that's impossible, because if you have a depression, you can't really be psychologically strong enough to not take any medication if it's a severe case. If it's a light depression, if it's sadness that can be treated by exercising or going to events or meeting your family and just doing something that you really love, yeah, you can avoid medication. But if it's really severe, and if it's not only that you think you have depression, but for example, you went to the hospital or went to the specialist and they said, oh yes, you have a depression, it's a severe case, and they prescribed a certain medication, then it's better to take that medication.
What do you think, in which cases, when someone suffering from depression, medication is simply not needed? And are there any such cases?
As I've mentioned before, if it's slightly, if it's a kind of a sadness that seems like it might be a light depression, or in between, as very sad mood and light depression, and yes, exercise might help, eating healthy might help, but drinking plenty of water might help, meeting your friends.
And also, as you mentioned before, people can help you
Yes.
when you have low depression.
And I would say not only professionals like
Yes.
psychologists, psychiatrists, but a friend, a family member that understands you and tries to help and not demonize you for being, oh, why are you sad all the time? Just get up and do something. No, if they understand that you are going through a depressive mood, a depressive period, and they try to help you and lift you up and ask you like what might help you and make you think about
What kind of activities
Yes.
can help you? Maybe I can do something for you. Yeah. Okay, so do you think there are any ways for a person to know for himself that he is suffering from depression? How distinguish low mood from permanent depression?
The key words in this question is permanent depression. So if you are feeling down, if you're feeling sad all the time, get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and say, "Oh, I look bad. I feel bad. I feel sad. I feel depressed." And it goes throughout the day, no matter what you're doing. If you're doing something it's hard for you, if you're doing something that you don't like, or if you're doing something that you like and it might seem easy for you, but you're still sad and you're still thinking, agonizing yourself and thinking something is wrong with me, it's a bad day. And a bad day, it's not only one day is bad, 2 days are bad, but a week a month, a year, the whole year seems like suffering, then it's most likely a depression and not low mood. Low mood can be, oh, I got a bad grade, I'm feeling bad today, but tomorrow you might feel good again.
Yeah, because you live in the moment, just in that moment that you some teachers give you a bad grade.
And I would also say, if other people are telling you, is there something wrong? Like, they notice there's something wrong with you, and you're trying, for example, to hide it and say, no, that everything is good for me, but they can see that something is wrong. Your friends, your family members, and not only your friends or family members, but just people in general.
Okay, but do you have any example of that kind of person who don't know that he is suffering or something, but you see that and you say that to him or to her, but he still doesn't understand that?
I was that person.
You was that person.
I was that person at certain points in my life.
Yeah.
3 times, I would say.
Yeah.
One time when I graduated from high school and I started studying economics and business at Vilnius University. And I thought that...
What kind of university?
Vilnius University.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I thought that I made the right decision, but my main argument was I was really childish and really stupid. I said that I wanted to make more money than my parents do. And I wasn't following my dreams. I was following a stupid idea of
The main idea,
making money,
because you're thinking about money. Yeah, it's always a big problem when people think just about money.
Yes, and I was trying to do my best at something that I didn't understand. And I was forcing myself to learn advanced mathematics. And I didn't understand why I was doing it. I was just suffering. From morning till night, I was suffering. And then I would go to the parties and I feel like, oh, I want to relax after a hard day. But I was just covering up my depression.
Did someone see that?
Yes, my roommate started seeing that I'm not.
Did you talk with her about that? Or him?
I did.
Roommate, her,
I
right?
was talking. I talked to her because we were previous to that. We were not classmates, but in a parallel class.
Yes. Yes.
So she wasn't my best friend, but we knew each other, and she started noticing that I didn't want to go out of my room sometimes, and I would just wanted to sleep. And I had papers to write, I had exercise to do, I had exams to prepare for, but I was just burned out. It was so weird because I was studying a lot, like forcing myself to study a lot, but I wasn't learning enough and I wasn't reaching good results. I remember I was taking my...
Because you don't like that.
Yes. And I forced myself...
I think it's the main problem.
I forced myself to do something that I didn't like, and it just started getting downhill from there. I started drinking a little bit. Yes, I never drank before, but Dad made me drink alcohol. Not a lot, I remember just a little bit, but still, why I was doing it? Because I felt like a failure and I wanted to cover it up somehow.
And you want to forget about that.
I even smoked a cigarette, I remember. I never done that before. And I didn't know why I was doing it. It's all that crumbling depression that was starting made me do those things. And it's really hard when you're a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And when you're doing something you hate, you're forcing yourself to the limits to still reach your best results. And that makes you depressed. and doubt yourself a lot and just lose your self-esteem and think like, oh, I'm such a failure, I'm such a piece of, like, I'm such a failure. And then I decided to drop out, out of a blue. I was like, I can't do this anymore, I'm dropping out. I called my mom. No, I first dropped out. I dropped out, and then I called my mom and I said, Mom, I dropped out of uni. And she didn't believe me. She was like, oh, you're thinking about dropping out? What do you think? No, I dropped out. I filled out papers. I'm going home because I can't do this anymore.
And because it makes you unhappy.
Yeah. And after that, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I came back home to my hometown and I was crying. I was sleeping a lot. That's one thing about depression, is that at least for me, I was sleeping a lot. I wanted to sleep on my emotions. I wanted to sleep on, just go to sleep and not wake up, just in order to feel less of a failure, less amount of time of a failure. But I didn't want to take action and do something about it.
Most of people who has depression always feeling like that they don't want to do something, they just want to be in bed, just sleep and or probably die. But it's not, maybe it is some kind of sound funny, but it's not, because there is normal reaction to them, because they always think about those things. And they most of the time they don't want to do anything and just thinking about death.
But the first time I didn't want to kill myself, or I didn't want to die. It's really, really interesting, because the second time when I had a depressive period, I wanted to die, and at first I didn't.
Did you try?
Yes, second time I tried. First time, like the situation that I talked about previously. No, I don't think I tried. I drank some medicine, but it was like valerian drops. I don't know how you call it correctly. Like soothing drops, some type of that old people drink.
I think we can,
I bought those and I drank those.
But there is big ones, big bottles, as I remember, and like small ones.
Small ones.
Yeah.
But at that time, as I remember correctly, I didn't want to kill myself. I was still young, maybe because I was still very young and I knew that I can change, and it's not...
You can change your life.
Yes,
and also
I can change my life, and it's not gonna hurt me a lot. Like, it's not 1 year. I was 19 at that time, and I knew that if I start studying something else when I'm 20, it's not such a big problem, because I'm still young and I'm still gonna graduate when I'm 24. 23, 24, it's not a big difference. So I was still hopeful for a better future, I guess. So it wasn't that deep, but the worst part was when I came back home, I only had high school diploma. And I was in a small town, and it was, at first I didn't even want to get a job, because I knew that my only option was to get a job, and then the next year apply for studies, yes. Something that I actually enjoy and I actually like. And I had such a low self-esteem that I thought that no one is gonna hire me, and that was... I went to one job interview.
Because you don't have that much experience.
Yeah. And I went to one job interview, I didn't get hired. I went to another place, and then I just gave up. I said, I'm not going to interviews, get away from me. And my parents tried to help me. I was going to our garden a lot. I just learned how to cook, because I didn't know how to cook. before. I learned how to cook. I was doing exercises. I was going to the pool and just trying to lift myself up somehow, just a little bit. But I was really scared to go out to the public because I knew that people would see me and they would question what is she doing in her hometown and not in Vilnius or Kaunas or abroad, studying, working. What is she doing here? I was really scared of meeting people that I know. That's why I didn't go out much. Yeah. That's a sad. I had a few sad periods in my life, and this one.
Depressive.
Yeah,
it was depressive.
Yeah. But at that point, I somehow just didn't take medicine.
Maybe because you don't need that at the time.
It
Maybe you just
for
need
me,
to
but-
change something, but not medicine or something.
Because I had hopes and dreams for the future. Because I knew that next year I'm gonna.
Because you knew that you're young and you can do whatever you want.
Yes.
Okay, so in your opinion, how do depressive moods differ in individuals with bipolar disorder compared to other forms of depression?
Like I personally myself never had bipolar disorder, or at least I think I've never had one, but I met when I was in psychiatric hospital. I met one guy who was diagnosed with bipolar. So just in general and for him, bipolar disorder is when your mood is either really low or you were just so happy and so excited and so ecstatic. So it's just either, there's no middle ground. There's either I'm so excited about life, or I want to do everything, I want to go everywhere.
So much energy.
Yes, and then your energy just dries down, no energy left, and you just want to lay down, cry, and do nothing, and then peak again. And
I
down.
think with bipolar, not nothing. And somehow you want to do something to yourself, but in a bad way. Hurting, or maybe trying to think about how you want to kill yourself or something like that, because with bipolar is like that. Because I know a lot of people also with bipolar disorder, and in that low time they want to do something to themselves, but in a bad way, and they thinking about that a lot, like basically every minute. So they think about that. Not even every minute, but even every second they think about that.
So in a difference of other depressive moods, so in other ones there are no peaks, no I'm such a good mood, everything is so good. Then bipolar, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's a good comparison, but it's kind of like a drug, stimulant drug, where you take that and you feel really high and just see stars and sun and everything is so good. And
but it's like that.
The effect wears off and you're just low, no energy, nothing.
I agree with that. How many depression forms do you know?
There are many depression forms, light ones and very severe ones. So if I'm thinking about the severe types of depression, there's like major depressive disorder or like clinical depression. So it's basically long-term type of depression that makes you suffer all the time. You're not interested in anything, and every single task seems so difficult. You can't amount to anything basically, and every single day seems like torture. So bipolar disorder that we were talking about, so also long-term depression form, some sort of maniac depression, type of maniac depression, and it's the people who are suffering from bipolar disorder, as I've mentioned before, they have very intensive swings and mood swings. So you're either ecstatic or you are just sad and not active and don't want to do anything and want to kill yourself or think that you're the worst person in the world. Seasonal depression.
I think we all have seasons.
Yeah, especially in Lithuania when it's dark and it's winter.
Yeah.
No sunlight. And actually, the sunlight, then there's no sunlight. Why are so many people depressed in Lithuania? Because it's dark.
It's dark season, right? Without sun, it's dark. Yes.
And a dark season lasts for like 9 months, except the 3 months of summer.
Actually, yeah, you're right. About 9 months.
Yeah. 7 to 9,
yeah.
Or seasonal. There is also like this depressive mood on for some reason for some people on like Christmas. Or like
when you need
Easter.
to buy so many gifts to others. Yeah.
Postpartum depression, of course. Then the women feel weird, and after they give birth, want to hurt themselves, want to hurt their baby for some reason, because there are some chemical changes in the brain because of lack of sleep and the hormonal differences.
Hormonal, you're right.
Psychotic depression, also kind of like a clinical depression form, type of psychosis. And then there goes into like schizophrenia and other types of diseases that are not part type of depressions.
What kind of those depression forms we you talk about?
Yes.
It's to you personally, it's very bad form, bad type, very hard to, I don't know, to be in that depression, to have that depression.
I would say psychotic or like major depressive disorder, and also bipolar.
So basically all of the bad ones.
Yes. Postpartum depression can be very severe as well.
Yeah.
And it can last for a long time, and like I personally don't know people, but I've seen videos, and after giving birth for some reason some of them want to kill themselves because of not only the hormonal differences, but
most of those women, I think at first they want to have kids, I think that, but when they become pregnant, they don't want it. Because of that depression. I think that. I don't know actually, but I think that.
They don't want to get rid of a baby because that's morally bad, and they made a decision. Now they got to deal with it for the rest of their lives. And they're
afraid of, I don't know, pain or something like that. So, maybe it's very bad depression form too, and very hard, I guess. I think.
I agree.
Since you yourself met the environment of psychiatric hospital because you also were a patient, what kind of people did you get to know there?
So I went to a psychiatric hospital. I kind of admitted myself there. It was a really weird situation because after that unsuccessful period when I was studying economics and I realized I didn't want that, the next year I started studying Lithuanian philology and advertising, and that was something I enjoyed. I really enjoyed, and I tried my best to do my best as good as I can, because I knew that I'm a year older than my classmates, than my course mates, which was not exactly the case. There was one woman who was like 37 or something, and a few others who were my age. Yeah. But when I was writing my bachelor's thesis and I was doing my internship at the same time, I was like editing a book that had like 1,200 pages, and I've always been a perfectionist, and I was doing a lot at one time, and I burnt out to the point I couldn't see that I was burnt out that much. I was studying day and night, like basically not sleeping enough, not eating well, and it got so bad that I started to scratch my face for I don't know for what reason. I couldn't feel it, but I started
Because you're getting nervous,
yes.
and also because you was very tired.
Yes, and I was scratching my face all the time, and I had wounds on my face because I was like scratching it so much. It's like you have a lot of pimples on your face and you just like scratch them till it bleeds. So I scratched my face a lot till it bleeds, and even until this day I have this very weird habit of like scratching my neck, and sometimes I have like patches on my neck that are like scratched, and you can see that I was scratching.
Is that painful or not?
No, it's not painful, it's just annoying.
Annoying feeling or what?
It's something that comes from within. It's really hard to explain why I'm doing it. It's like a fidget when you're doing something with you have to do something with your hands or with your feet. For me, it's like scratching my face. That's why I have like scars on my face because I'm scratching it. So going back to the point. Oh yeah, and I wasn't sleeping. I was editing that book at night. I was writing my thesis during the day, and then I was just writing all the time and not sleeping, not eating well, and it came to the point where I just couldn't fall asleep. So I wasn't sleeping, and that messed up with my brain a lot, and I couldn't eat. I didn't want to eat.
Yeah.
I was like scratching my face. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to sleep. I came to the point that I couldn't think normally, and I couldn't write anymore. I couldn't edit my book anymore, and I was crying. And at that time I came back home to my parents because I thought that it might help me being with my parents to calm down, but no, it didn't. I was still working day and night, and one night I don't remember exactly how it happened, but one night, like, I was crying. I woke up and it seemed like I had a bad dream or something, and at night I was crying that I can't sleep and I want to die, and I was just talking nonsense, and I looked so bad that my mom was like, I can't look at you right now. I don't recognize you. I see in front of me there's a person that is not you. You need help. Like, how can I help?
You need to do something to yourself. Something good to yourself,
and
not bad.
My parents, I've never seen my dad cry because of me before. Like, I knew he might have been disappointed when I dropped out of economics at one time, but he cried. My dad cried looking at me because he saw that I was suffering too much. And the next day they asked me,
and you are his daughter, so of course.
And the next day they asked me, like, we don't know what to do with you, so we are going to take you to the hospital. Like, do you want to go to the hospital? Like, can we take you to the hospital? And I was like, and I agreed.
Sure.
And I agreed to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Because even though I was like super depressed and oh my god, like super depressed, at the same time, I kind of saw that going to the hospital part. I'm a sneaky. I'm sneaky. I thought that if I go to that hospital, I could avoid finishing my thesis, and I would and I would get like academic year off because I was in a mental hospital, and I was like, okay, so maybe it will help me in one way. I could possibly get a year off, or on the other hand, even if I don't get a year off, I would just get help, professional help. Because I never wanted to take medicine, even at that state that I was in. I never wanted to take medicine, but I knew that if I go to the hospital, we would give me medicine. And I was still thinking straight, kind of, but I looked very bad. And then I don't know what that was, but I think it was some sort of panic attack when my parents just took me to the car. My mom said, just get dressed, take your jeans, get dressed, take something. We are taking you to the hospital. We can't look at you looking like that. We want to help you. So I remember I was crying. I put my jeans on, I put my jacket on, and they took me to the ER. And in the to the hospital, I think it was ER or reception or something. And I went there, and I was crying, I was sobbing, because I had so many thoughts in my head, like, I need this, because I feel so bad, but at the same time, I was still thinking logical. I was like, oh my god, there's gonna be a record that I was in a psychiatric hospital, or it's gonna be a record that that was something bad with me. No, take me home. And I wanted to go back home, but I was already in the hospital, so. But now looking back, I remember like how people were looking at me. They saw a crazy person entering the hospital, because my face was not bleeding, but it looked terrible. It looked really, really bad. And I myself was like shaking and crying, and they saw that the nurses and everyone was like, what's happened, what happened, and my parents like tried to explain what is happening, and then they took me to the I don't remember where they took me to some type of room. Then and I was so psychotic. I didn't realize I was so psychotic, but I was so psychotic that they took me to the room, and they put a needle in my ass, in my bottoms, to calm me down. So they shoved a needle and a syringe and with some sort of calming medicine, because I was like an animal. So they wanted to calm me down, and they calmed me down like that, needle to the bottom. And so it was COVID at that time, so I couldn't go straight to a ward. And so they took me into this special ward, and they do a COVID test, and they leave you for 24 hours there. And they took a COVID test, like shoved the thing in my nose. And I remember they left me. No, in the beginning, they let me to call my teachers, to inform my teachers that I'm at the hospital, because they were going to take my phone away from me. So my parents called my teachers, my bachelor thesis
and they explained everything?
Yes. They explained that Joana is in the hospital. We didn't mention I'm in a mental hospital, but they said that Joana got sick, very sick, and she's in the hospital right now, and we don't know how long she's going to be in the hospital. And then I remember...
It sounds very bad.
Yeah, they gave me phone. I was calmed down a little bit, but I was still crying. And they gave me a phone, so I talked to my teacher, crying and sobbing, and like, I'm in the hospital. I don't know how long I'll be here. And she was like, calm down, everything is fine, everything is alright. And I was worried because I'm gonna miss the deadline. I had to present my bachelor thesis till a certain day, and I'm not gonna be able to do that when I'm in the hospital. And they were like, calm down, everything is fine. And then another teacher called me later to say everything is fine, just take a rest, get the medicine, we understand. Yeah,
Because it's a big deal. Teachers
Yes.
can understand that.
Yes, and I was in that solitary compartment. I don't know how to explain that place was. It was that since they didn't know if I had COVID or not, so the nurses had. We were all covered up from head to toe, and they brought me food. So I remember they gave me an egg, a tomato, and probably, if I remember correctly, butter, like piece of butter and a bread. And they didn't give me a knife because I could kill myself with a knife, so they gave me a plastic spoon. And I calmed down a little bit, and I was trying to eat with that. Yeah, and my parents, I don't remember if they stayed there or went home or whatever, but one doctor came in to fill out some papers, some documentation, kind of determine my diagnosis, what it looked like from first glance. At the first glance, they asked me what my symptoms were, and I remember what I did wrong. They were asking me what I'm feeling, what is happening, and I tried to explain what is happening with me.
But you couldn't?
But it was really hard for me to explain. I was just crying, and I was saying, I don't know, I'm just studying and reading, and
And you lost your
I'm
mind.
burned out. I just can't do this anymore. And then I said something that made me that. Because of that line, they admitted me to the mental hospital. I said that I want to jump from the bridge. I remember this correctly. And my mom, later on, when I was talking to my mom months after that, my mom mentioned that if you didn't say you wanted to jump from the bridge, they wouldn't have taken you to the hospital. Why did you say that? And I was like, at that moment, I felt like that. But she was like, why did you say that? If you didn't say that, they would have let you go home. But because you said you wanted to kill yourself, that's it. They took you to the hospital because of that. So I spent...
How long you spent there?
I spent 24 hours in that solitary compartment, and then they took me to the first floor with severe psychiatric patients.
Yeah.
And they were people, I was scared to be there, honestly. I was already calmed down.
Yeah.
They took me, first of all, before that, no, they took me to the first floor with the people who had schizophrenia and who were talking to other worlds. They were just blank eyes, roaming around, talking to themselves, not seeing what's going on around them. They were just
Living their own life.
living in their head, and that was scary for me. I saw those people and I was like,
Because you never been in that kind of place. So
why
of course,
am I here?
Yeah.
And I thought that the whole hospital was like that. I was so scared that I was gonna be roommates with some crazy lady. That was really scary. But I spent only one day in the first floor to calm down completely.
Yeah.
I could think logically, or at least as logically as I could at that time. And then they took me to talk to psychiatrists or psychologists, I don't know exactly. They gave me a questionnaire to fill out, how I'm feeling, what kind of symptoms I have, to try to determine what is happening with me, what my am I depressed, am I bipolar, what is happening exactly.
Yeah.
So first of all, when he saw me just sobbing and crying, they called my diagnosis acute psychosis. So it's just temporary psychosis
Yeah.
that just goes off. But is there something wrong with me in general?
Yeah.
If not only that psychosis. Yeah, so they gave me a questionnaire, and I remember filling that questionnaire, and they were asking like, how you feeling when you're doing this and that, how depressed do you feel when you do like certain activities, like do you feel dizzy when you study, do you feel this and that, when you're driving a car, and then a lot of sexual questions actually that I didn't know how to answer because I'm asexual. So I was like, how often do you have sex? Like, and there was never, yeah. And I was asking her, how can I skip this question because I don't. Okay, you can skip this question. And then there were questions like, how often do you think about killing yourself? How often do you think? And at that point, I was already a little bit more self-aware that I probably shouldn't answer 100% sincerely because I would be locked up for a long time. So I kind of calmed down and I answered those questions as if it was normal day, not that psychotic day. Yeah, and then the doctor looked at those answers. He asked me some other questions, like if I have physical difficulties like breathing or eating, and yeah, I said like I wasn't eating enough, like I didn't feel like going out of bed, and yeah, I was quite sincere. And at that time she decided that I didn't have depression, I didn't have like any psychological problem. There was nothing. She said that the doctor said that there was nothing actually wrong with me. There was no disease. I don't know how to explain it, but she just said that I was burnt out and tired and I need to rest, and they just need to examine me a little bit more. Maybe they will find something later on, because now it was just like acute psychosis that went away, but with no other serious problems. So yeah, and then I spent some time in the first floor with the severe patients, and then when I calmed down, when I started feeling better, when I started sleeping and eating, they transferred me to the second floor, and there were people who had psychological problems, but they weren't as severe. For example, some of the people had bipolar, but it was under control. Some of the people had even the crisis center there because it was COVID, and some of the places weren't working, so it was all mushed into one. There were even like crisis center women who got like beaten up by their partners, and they were dead, or they don't feel safe in their home environment, so they didn't have psychological problems, so they're kind of helping those people who had psychological problems. Yeah, and I spent 2 weeks in that second floor. I met a lot of different people. I made
Do you remember? Yeah. Do you remember? Because you're talking about other patients.
Yes.
Do you have any stories? Maybe they tell you something about themselves or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of stories. First of all, I tried to look around what kind of people were there because I thought that everyone would be like old. And my first roommate was a woman who I believe she also had psychosis like me. Mm-hmm. Because she was crying, and she came to the hospital with only a plastic bag with a few clothes, and I remember like she was crying on the phone. I was like, oh, you left me with only one bag of things. I don't know what to do. I don't know where I am. They took me to the room with this very young girl, and I don't know where I am. And yeah, she was talking. Ooh. and then she was sleeping. I remember I couldn't sleep because she was snoring a lot, and it interfered with my sleeping schedule because at the hospital we needed me to sleep a lot, so I couldn't sleep, and I was transferred to another room. And then I had I don't remember what was my second roommate. Another woman, but another woman who had just I don't remember what her diagnosis was. In one room there were two women from crisis center, so they got beaten up. And in the other room there was this woman. She had cancer, and because of that she got depressed, and she had some psychological problems because it was really hard for her. It was really hard to deal with the cancer, the diagnosis. And I remember her telling, we were just sitting in the lobby in the main room, and she was telling about how she tried to, many times she tried to kill herself. And she was like, the first time I tried to hang myself, and she described in detail how she tried to hang herself. And then, but she was like, I remember that I still have a daughter or son, I don't remember, but she had a kid, and she was like, I wanted to still live for them. And for her it was also a pain because she felt a constant pain and she wanted to get rid of that pain. And
what kind of cancer she has?
Breast cancer, if I remember correctly. She had a breast cancer, and she looked like she had it. My grandfather died of cancer, and she looked like he looked at the final stage of his life. Shaved head and very thin. And actually she was, when she told me how old she was like in her early 40s, but she looked like she was 60 or something because of the situation. And then I was listening to her story. I was like, oh man, like I'm so I need to be happy. I need to turn myself around somehow, because there are people who are actually dealing with a lot more problems than me. Then I made a friend with another guy. There was only one young person like me. He was 27. I was
he
yeah,
guy.
There was a guy. He was 27. I was 23, almost 24 at the time, I believe.
Yeah.
And we became friends. Like one day I just saw that there's a young person, and I wanted to talk to him, and he had a bipolar disorder, and he admitted himself to the hospital like I did. Not exactly like I did, but he voluntarily came to the hospital. He said
because he understood that he needs help.
Yeah, because he felt that his medication is not working for him anymore.
Yeah.
That he felt suicidal, and he couldn't help himself anymore. So he went to the hospital and said, look, I feel this and this and this and that, and I need to admit myself to the hospital for a little bit. Yeah, and he had a computer, because they took phone from me. They took a computer from me because it was because my illness, like my situation was related to studies. I was studying all the time, and that made me, I was like editing the book, writing my thesis, doing all that work, and that made me depressed, and that made me psychotic. And so they took it from me, and we had the computer, and we were watching movies, and they took my belts. I remember, like, everything. I wanted to call my mom, and they gave me the phone, and it was out of battery, and they had my charger somewhere locked up, and they gave me that charger. And also my mom when I went to the hospital, before that, my mom put a little bottle of a spray for my wounds on my face so I can heal them. So they would let me every single day. They would let me to spray it on a piece of cotton and just spray it all over my face, and then I would take that back to them. Yeah. So there
Even
was
that thing that
Yeah.
they
yeah, because they thought that I would drink it. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so that was this guy. There is also this man who couldn't sleep for like 4 or 5 days, and he admitted himself to the hospital because he couldn't fall asleep. So he was also in a psychiatric hospital. There was also this woman who was just sad, and I don't know what was her diagnosis, but yeah, she was just really sad, and she wasn't talking to anyone about her diagnosis. There were some friendly old grandmas who felt really sorry for me and were asked, "Oh, you're such a poor girl. You studied a lot. Yeah, why are you here? Oh, you studied a lot, and you're just here because you studied too much and you got tired. Oh, we understand. Oh, you're good. You're good. You're gonna be good. Yeah." And now that I'm thinking about the hospital, they gave me a lot of medicine. And I wasn't used to medicine. I wasn't drinking any medicine before. I didn't take like
Before hospital.
yeah, and that made me really sleepy, and they messed up my head somehow. I felt really tired all the time and really sleepy, and I wanted to cry because of that medicine. Like, it gave me one type of medicine in the morning, one type of medicine during the lunch, one type of medicine in the evening, and I felt really, really weird. I felt like, I don't know how it feels like to be on drugs, but I felt like I was
Because
kind
it
of
was
on drugs.
the first time to you, so
Yeah.
it's kind of normal reaction,
Yeah.
I guess.
And it was so boring. I wanted to do exercises and they didn't allow me to do any exercises.
Why?
We had blankets
Yes.
to put it on our beds. And I wanted to do some yoga, so because it was so boring, I didn't know what to do after some days where I spent
Yeah, because
there.
you don't have phone, you don't
Yeah,
have
I
computer,
don't have
you don't
phone.
have book, nothing.
I have nothing. Yeah, and I didn't know what to do. So they were saying I had to rest, but I didn't want to rest because I was used to like working all the time. And then they told me to rest, and I can't rest. I need to do something. So I put that blanket on the ground, and I started doing yoga or like some exercises. And then the nurse, one time she came into the ward and she saw that I'm doing that, and she confiscated my blanket, and she said that I can't do exercise because it's not beneficial to me. That
Even
it
you
hurts me.
can't do
Yes.
yoga?
Yes, they didn't allow me to exercise because they said that I was hurting myself with doing physical exercises because it doesn't help me, it harms me. Yeah. And in a psychiatric hospital, there were not enough, no therapy, no real help, I would say. No real help, because I was just told to drink my medicine, to sleep, to rest, to eat.
And there is no activities there.
No.
But maybe because of COVID
yeah,
situation, because you mentioned
COVID.
before that.
Yes. If it wasn't COVID, I would have been given more maybe therapy sessions and some like talking with the professional more of us. But also there is another thing that I'm thinking about. It's free. Like, you are there in a public hospital you don't pay money, so they just give you food, medicine, and
that's it.
And that's it. Yeah. So there wasn't enough help and trying to understand what kind of help I might need when I go out. How can I help myself? That was the hardest part. I knew that I am going out and then I'm on my own again. And what if it happens again? Am I gonna be admitted to the hospital again? No, I'm gonna help myself somehow. But I spent 2 weeks there. I didn't know. They never tell you when are you gonna get out. They just kind of monitor you. How are you feeling, or how are you doing?
They're analyzing.
Analyzing, yes. And I remember there was this doctor who would come every other 2 or 3 days in the evening to ask how you feel, how was your day, how are you feeling, which medicine is medicine helping you, how is it helping you, are you thinking about killing yourself or not. There was this one doctor who would come in the evening for few minutes to talk to you a little bit about how you feel, and they were deciding how much more time do you need to be in the hospital. Yeah. And I remember I spent there 2 weeks. I got better, and that was the last day. I didn't know it's gonna be my last day, but they were like, okay, we see that you made progress, that you are good now, and we are going to tell you when you're gonna leave. Yeah. And they gave me some papers to fill out, how am I feeling, and then they gave me a recipe to buy some medicine, some certain types of medication when I go out of the hospital. And there was one type of medication and another. I believe 2 or 3 types of medication that I would have to drink after I when I go back home. And
did you?
And I went to the pharmacy and I bought that medication.
Yeah.
And I tried to drink it for 2 or 3 days, but it made me very sleepy. It made me
You don't like that feeling.
I felt so weird, I felt so sleepy and so tired all the time, and I knew it's because of a medication, because they messes with your brain, with your brain chemical system. And I was like, Mom, I can't drink this anymore. I'm throwing it out in a trash can, in a trash bin, and I'm gonna help myself somehow to get up. And they also, and I throw it away. I throw the medication away, and I said, I'm gonna help myself. I'm gonna eat healthy. I'm gonna drink water. I don't know, exercise. Just try to stay calm as much as I can. But I'm not gonna drink that medicine. I'm against it. I don't want to drink medicine. And they also told me that I must register to go to the psychologist. Or psychiatrist, I don't remember, a psychologist, to a doctor, and just to go to a regular session. I never.
Every year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I never went. I never called anyone.
Why?
Because I knew that I knew that I thought at that time that was just period. That was just a moment when I felt down.
And you think that you don't need that?
Yes, and I said that's a waste of time, that's a waste of money, that's not gonna help me in the long run. So I never went to a psychologist. I
never drink medicine again.
Yes, and I never drank medicine again. Oh, and now I remember. Then you asked about people that I met.
Yeah.
I just remember that there's another person that I forgot to mention, but I feel like he is worth mentioning. There was this guy who saw hallucinations, and he jumped from the building because the voices in his head told him to jump from the building.
When you in that hospital?
Yes, when I was in that hospital, and he was all in bandages from head to toe. His neck was crushed, his bones were crushed.
Oh my God.
And yeah, and he was in the psychiatric hospital, but the nurses from the surgical department or from other department was coming to his room every day for a few times to change his bandages, to put medicine on his wounds and everything. But he was talking still. When he was in the hospital, he was still talking to other worlds, and he was. I wanted to talk to him and to get to know who he was, why does that happen to him.
But you also want to analyze people in this
Yeah.
hospital. I feel that because you
Yes.
talking, because you mentioned so many histories about other people, because you're trying to connect with them.
Yeah.
I can see that because you just talking not about yourself but about them.
I wanted
That's
to get to know
interesting.
people.
Yeah.
I had nothing to do. I'm more of an introvert, but there I wanted to talk to people because I had not much to do.
Because
Yeah.
it's interesting atmosphere. So yeah.
Yeah. And that
I will
guy
do the same actually.
Yeah, and that guy said that he saw hallucination and he heard of voices in his head that told him to jump. And he went to the tall building and he jumped and he crushed to his bones. Yeah, and he said, add me to Facebook, and he typed in his name and last name, and I saw a picture and I was like, is that you? And he was like, yeah, it's me. He looked so different. Oh my god. I remember I was looking at good looking guy, just like happy on his motorbike and like skinny, and then I was looking at the person in front of myself. He was just so different. No light in his eyes, like no happiness in his eyes, and just his face was blank and he was all in bandages, and he was laying there, and he was in his late 20s.
Yeah.
And his whole body was crushed, like a lot of bones were crushed, and his psychological state was really, really, really bad. He couldn't recognize myself. One day I was talking to him, I was consoling him, and then the other day I would come and he would barely remember me because he also broke some bones in his skull. He has some brain damage as well. So yeah, there are a lot of sad
There are a lot of stories
in that hospital. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel that you heal?
That I healed.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I would say I've never wanted to admit that it was that bad for me. It's really hard to admit that you have a psychological problems, that you might be depressed, that you might have some sort of psychological problem with you. It's really hard to accept that, and I am a very sensitive person. I am a perfectionist. I've always been some sort of high achiever.
Yeah.
And if something goes wrong for me, if something is difficult, I blow that bubble to the maximum, and if there is a small problem, I see it as a very big problem, and I tend to I can get it out of my head if something is wrong. And even now, like right now, some days I feel like I think about the same thing a lot, and I just agonize myself by thinking that I did something bad, and I'm thinking about it, and then the next day it turns out I didn't do anything wrong, everything was fine, but I was thinking about it the whole day. If it is it depression? Might be. Is it just my sensitivity and my perfectionism and my I don't know. I sometimes feel confused, and I sometimes feel I might still have some internalized psychological problems that I try to cover up. There are moments in my life where I feel really good about what I'm doing, and I feel like I have a purpose and I'm going towards something, and I feel great, and everything just flows out very nicely. But then there's some minor issue, and I blow that bubble to the maximum, and that issue gets in my head, and I start to actually do worse in my tasks that I have to complete, and it gets over my head until I say, Jan, stop, everything is fine, you're doing fine, it's not that bad that you think it is. And then